Good morning, fifth graders. Welcome to Fantasy Lesson 5. This one is called Here Be Dragons. You're looking at a map, a really old map that I'll explain here in just a moment. In some social studies books, you might see old maps drawn by the very first mariners who charted the oceans. These maps can be mysterious and symbolic. When they wanted to show that someplace was dangerous, for instance, they might write, "Here be dragons" on that area. The Latin word for that was hic sunt dracones, which were first written on the famous globe called the Hunt-Lennox globe in 1503, a long time ago. Or the cartographers or map makers might show sea monsters lurking along the coast. There is this map here that you're looking at called the Carta Marina. It was created in the 16th century, and it shows dragons attacking boats and all of the mythical dangers one would encounter if you ever dared to leave the familiar shores of your homeland. So if you look closely at the map, you will see all these monsters in the water. What's fascinating about these charts is that the dragons and sea monsters depicted on them are symbolic. Long ago, mariners probably saw a giant squid and then drew them on their map as sea monsters. But map makers also put dragons on maps to show that the explorer was approaching a place that was unknown and dangerous. They showed dragons in places where earthquakes happened, for instance. They marked the borders of unknown terrain with hic sunt dracones, here be dragons, has come to be a symbolic expression meaning, look out, there's trouble. Today I want to teach you that in fantasy stories, characters face different kinds of dragons. Some are literal, while others are metaphorical dragons, symbolizing conflicts faced by those characters. Experienced readers look for these conflicts and consider whether some of them are becoming themes in their novels. If we think about the paper bag princess, which we read at the beginning of this unit, Princess Elizabeth literally faces a dragon. When I think about the big problem that Elizabeth has, it's that a dragon has smashed her castle and taken Prince Ronald away. And of course, Elizabeth conquers this dragon. She finds the dragon, tricks him, and completes her quest by rescuing Prince Ronald. But the paper bag princess is more complicated than just a simple quest. If all that happened were that Elizabeth rescued Prince Ronald, there wouldn't be any significant character change, and the story wouldn't really be that memorable for us. But Elizabeth does change. So readers, think with me for a moment. Ask yourself, what other dragons does Elizabeth face? What other conflicts or troubles does she have besides the actual dragon? You can pause the video so you can think about that. Some of her problems are that she's homeless and she has to depend on her own resources. And then there's Ronald. When Elizabeth gets to that cave and rescues Ronald, she finds that Ronald is just as much of a monster as the dragon was. At least the dragon was polite, even if he did want to eat her. Ronald turns out to be really cruel. So really, Ronald is her dragon, is her metaphorical dragon. He's the thing that she needs to conquer. He's the problem she has to get past. His cruelty and indifference, his snobbery. That's her dragon. If I were a medieval cartographer and making a map of this story, I would show Ronald as a dragon inside the cave to symbolize, look out, here's trouble. When I think about Ronald being one of Elizabeth's problems or conflicts, I realize that maybe the author is teaching that it's important to make wise choices about relationships. So I might say, for a theme in life, it's important to make wise choices about relationships. So we were just thinking metaphorically. You could also think about your dragons, because we all have dragons too. Let's switch to the Thief of Always. We're right at the point in the story where Harvey was turned into a vampire, and he terrified Wendell. He's also found out that they can't leave the house, that Mr. Hood has them prisoner. So we could also talk about Harvey's dragons. So if you're thinking about that, What are Harvey's problems? What is he struggling with? Well, he's struggling with Hood's house. That's definitely one of his dragons. If he's feeling any regret about going with Rictus in the first place, that might be a dragon. And what about Wendell? You could do this for every character. Wendell, he has an inner dragon, right? The dragon is maybe inside of him because Wendell struggles with greed. He's constantly wanting to eat and he wants presents and things. So I feel like one of Wendell's dragons is his own greed. I want you to think about when you're reading Button Hill, I want you to think about the metaphorical dragons that the characters in the story face. What are their troubles? What do they struggle with? A lot of times, the thing that they're struggling with lends itself to a theme that's developing in the story, and it's important to be thinking about that. So remember, the dragons could be troubles that they face, things that they have no control over. They could be flaws that are inside the character. And also think about how facing these dragons might be related to the theme in the story. So keep this in mind as you're reading Button Hill. The character's problems and how that relates to a theme that's being developed. All right, that's all for today, boys and girls. Happy reading.